What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Welcome back for another retro review of A Different World Season 3 Episode 16. So listen, here's another great one. I'm sure that this probably aired during Black History Month as well as the last episode. We start this episode off, we see rehearsals going on for some sort of Black History tribute, okay? Now, we have Whitley doing an Alvin Ailey piece. We see a bunch of students, some of them being the African students we've met, practicing dance, and they have the congos and the music. Dwayne is on lights. Freddie is the director, and while Whitley is practicing and doing her dancing, we run into someone who is going to become very important for the next few episodes, Julian. Now, again, we all know Julian. And this is the thing. Let's talk for a second about the trajectory of the Whitley-Dwayne romance. Whitley and Dwayne needed something to infuse this romance, right? So Whitley meets Julian, and it's immediate attraction. And Julian, we find out, is an exchange student. He's taking a semester. He goes to Georgetown, but he's taking a semester at Hillman. And him and Freddie are actually working on the anti-apartheid club or organization. I won't call it a club. Organization. And so he was showing up there because he got the flyers mixed up. And he ends up, they talk a little bit. He recognized the dance that she was doing as an Alvin Ailey piece, and they got to talking about dance and all the stuff that Whitley likes to talk about, honey, the arts and all that important stuff. And so they sort of end the conversation on a good note, but not really, they ain't sealed the deal. And he actually ends up calling her, I think he calls her Claudette. He said, "You look more like a Claudette, not a Whitley." So Whitley tries to flirt with him, but he seems interested, but he doesn't, like I said, they don't seal the deal per se. So later on at the pit, Dwayne before we get to the pit, let me see, I'm getting in order. Freddie is getting documents from Walter, because for the anti-apartheid organization, I don't want to call them a club. She needs the documents to find out which companies have and have not divested. Now, for you young folk who don't know what I'm talking about, during this time period, most college campuses, black or white, had an anti-apartheid, some sort of organization that specifically was about doing whatever they could do on this side to try to end apartheid in South Africa. And apartheid in South Africa, it was like Jim Crow, but it was a lot more institutionalized than Jim Crow was. But it was like Jim Crow. And so on this side of the world, the most that we could do was put pressure on companies who did business in South Africa, because again, we know that everything becomes financial. So if we could pressure certain companies, I remember Coca-Cola was one of the bigger companies, and a lot of these other companies, to divest, meaning pull plants out of South Africa, pull money out of South Africa, and really put the financial screws on South Africa. They didn't want people going to travel to South Africa. Don't go to South Africa. And don't give them any money to make them stop. To put the screws on them to stop. And so, Hillman College was no different. And so Freddie is looking through the documents to find out what companies have and have not divested from South Africa, so they would know which companies to target to say, okay, well, we're not going to shop there. We're not going to buy from them. We're not going to do this. Coca-Cola divested because people outside of South Africa said, as long as y'all are doing business in South Africa, we're not buying no Coke products. And they started seeing the impact in their sales, and they was like, all right, well, I guess we're going to get up out of South Africa, because South Africa is not more important than the rest of our money. Now, while this is going on, Kimberly gets a scholarship, the Charles Drew Scholarship, sponsored by some company, child. And it's going to take care of her, it's going to basically pay her way through Hillman so she doesn't have to work anymore. Well, actually, they'll have her working at the lab, actually. She doesn't have to work for Mr. Gaines anymore. She'll still be working, but she'll be working in the medical field. So she goes to quit her job. She tells Mr. Gaines, listen, I have this scholarship. It's going to, pay for my schooling. I'm going to be working in the lab. And, I'm here to give you my 2 weeks notice. And, he's like, I get it. I understand. He's Mr. Gaines, so he's real surly about it, but he gets it. He definitely understands, and he loves him some Kim, and he wants to see Kim be a doctor more than Kim want to be a doctor, so he's cool with it. He's going to miss her, obviously, but he's cool with it. So down at the pit, we see Dwayne and Ron doing what Dwayne and Ron does, child. They looking at the women. And Whitley comes in, and Julian is sitting at the table by himself. And so Whitley goes over to talk to Julian, and they go off. They create this, they start having this conversation, this dialogue. And he asks her what her major is, and she said art history. And he was like, oh, well, what's your concentration? And she tells him, and they actually start having a conversation about Rodin and these different Rodin, and these different artists. And of course, Julian he knows everything. He's so intelligent and knowledgeable, and of course Whitley, she loves it. And he ends up asking, she said, why don't you join, come down to the French club? We discussed these things. And he said, well, why do we have to wait? Why not, have our own little French club meeting? And she's like, okay. And so, she agrees to go out on a date with him. And of course, Ron is more upset than Dwayne is, because Ron thinks that he's dating Whitley in his head, child. So we get back to Gilbert Hall, and who is in jeans and a sweater on their way out on a date, baby? Whitley Gilbert. And Kim can't believe it. Kim cannot believe that Whitley is putting on jeans to get ready to go on this date. And Whitley was like, be happy for me. I really like him. He's really cool. Now, I'm not sure if this was their first date or not. I felt like Whitley wouldn't have wore jeans on a first date, but maybe if they had gone out on a few dates and she was a little more comfortable and he told her, hey, this is going to be more of a casual thing. But, okay, they didn't get that deep into it, so neither am I. I'm going to let that go. So while they're talking, Freddie comes in, because of course Kim asked Whitley about, well, what about Dwayne? And she was like, Dwayne, Julian is a man. Dwayne is still a boy, So while they're doing all of this, while they're having this conversation, Freddie comes in, and she starts talking about how Orange Glow Company has not divested from South Africa. And Kim was like, well, no, they said that they divested, months ago. And Whitley was, Freddie was like, no, they said they divested, but they really haven't. They really haven't divested, and we got to do something about it because, they pay for our library, they pay for our auditorium, they've donated so much money to school, they've donated so much money to Hillman that we gotta, we can't let this go. Like, we have to go to the Board of Trustees with some demands. And what they find out is that Kim's scholarship is actually paid for from the Orange Glow Company, just a subsidiary of it. And so now Kim is being faced with, do I keep my scholarship or do I not keep my scholarship? Do I stand on my principles or do I have my scholarship? And of course, Freddie is like, listen, Kim, if I got to sell incense on the side of the road, I'll help you in any way I can, but you cannot take this scholarship. And of course, Whitley is like, girl, if you don't take that scholarship. And Whitley, both sides brought up some valid points. Whitley was like, listen, at the end of the day, when you become a doctor, you can do more good for your people as a doctor. Does it really matter? Like, what is Kim not taking her scholarship on this side of the world going to do for the people in South Africa? And of course, Freddie was like, because you're standing on something. So Jaleesa comes in and lets Whitley know that her date is here. And so Whitley goes down to talk to Julian. Now, Julian is there to cancel the date and take a rain check. Because he's like, listen, we having an emergency, anti-apartheid meeting, so we can figure out what demands we're going to, put on to the Board of Trustees. And Whitley and Julian end up getting into the same argument. And it's really interesting because when it came to Kim, Whitley always was there. A1, going back to that first semester when Kim thought she was pregnant and Whitley stayed up with her ass all night. Whitley always had her, and Whitley was going toe-to-toe with Julian. Whitley was like, you, in your privileged world, you don't understand what my roommate is going through. Like, for people like myself, we ain't never got to worry about our tuition being paid. We knew before we even went to high school that our tuition was taken care of, right? But for my, but for my roommate, not only is she not in that same situation, but she's trying to be a doctor. Like, she would do so much more good for the people. And listen, Whitley gave it to him. I was here for Whitley. I was so proud of Whitley in this moment because she stood in that. And for every argument he made, she had a counter argument. And they went back and forth. And then finally she said, well, I tell you what, your rain check just bounced, buddy. And of course Dwayne is there, and he is loving every minute of it. And he, of course, he had to heckle Julia a little bit about Whitley giving it to him as bad as Whitley gave it to him. And so we get to the meeting, and of course all of them are at the meeting to discuss what demands they're going to put on the board of trustees. And Whitley was like, so what we gonna do? We're gonna ask, what we gonna do? We're gonna tear down the library, we're gonna tear down the auditorium. Like, they've given so much money to the school. What is it that we really realistically can expect to get? And again, you had some really good arguments for both sides of the coin. And what ended up happening was we had two African students that spoke. Both of them, we're going to assume, came from South Africa, but they had two very different experiences. One had the experience of, listen, my dad still is in South Africa. He works at the factory. And yes, I plan to take my education and go back to South Africa and improve South Africa, improve the country as it is. The second student says, you know what, that's great that he can go back, but I can't. Me and my friends participated in the protests in Soweto, and some of my friends were killed. I can't go back. And so for me, it's a different experience. And so as long as apartheid lives, me and my family just aren't safe. And so even within the country, you had two very different viewpoints. And so that lets you know that this was not a simple black and white situation or a simple resolution to it, And so, of course, Whitley got up to defend Kim. Kim was like, nah, not right now, I'm good. No, right now, I'm not good. And even Walter was like, listen, I hear what all of y'all are saying, and that's great, but let's come up with a plan, a realistic plan to take to the board. And so they decided that they would present the board with the plan to put pressure on the Orange Glow Company and give them a timeline of when they were going to divest. And if they don't divest in that timeline, then of course they will up their the pressure or what have you, because there is so much money that's tied in, and it does affect so many students. And so that was sort of the decision. And so Kim told Whitley she was going to give her scholarship back. She wasn't going to take the scholarship. And Whitley was like, but Kim, like, you really can't afford to do that. She said, I know. She said, but I would never be able to live with myself knowing that I could have taken a stand and I didn't. And I was like, that's deep. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's deep. So she ends up going back to Mr. Gaines and telling him, listen, I was a little premature in putting in my notice. And by this time, he already knows what it is, because Mr. Gaines knows everything. And he's actually packing up all of his products that came from the Orange Glow Company to send back. He said, and I'm not going to buy any more from them either until they divest. He said, so go on and get, help me pack this stuff up, and basically, listen, you good, girl. You got your job. I got you. And so, again, when I love this. I love the fact that I'm going back and doing this, you guys. It just reminds me so much of that time period. I was in college during a lot of these years. During a different world started before I went to college, but it overlapped while I was in college. And a lot of these issues were just real issues. And like I said, every college campus in the country, whether it was a HBCU or not, dealt with this apartheid issue, right? And this was a very real issue. And I think for a lot of people in my generation, we looked at participating in the anti-apartheid issue as we weren't there in the 60s and we couldn't do it. But this was the best. It's sort of like this generation's Black Lives Matter, like last summer. For the people who could participate in the Black Lives Matter protest, it was sort of like, now I have a chance to do my part. And for us, that's what this was for us. I'm going to speak for myself. It was like, okay, I can I can boycott Coca-Cola. I can boycott these other companies, and I can, well, you know, I wasn't traveling the world then, but okay, I ain't gonna go to South Africa, you know. And it very much, it was a moment. It was definitely a moment. And so this was another great episode that ties directly in with Black History Month. So y'all go check it out. If y'all haven't seen it, go check it out. Season 3, episode 16. All right? Okay. Talk to y'all later. Peace.